oscillate, I guess, right?
Well,
or that was the foxhole one.
That was the foxhole one.
This Amateur Radio Roundtable is brought to you in part by Icom America. Well, hello out there to everyone out there in internet land and radio land and wherever you might be. This is Amateur Radio Roundtable. I'm Tom Medlin, W5KUB. And it's Tuesday night, time for a roundtable again. And if you're listening out there on WBCQ, International Shortwave Station, WBCQ on 5130, you can join the show if you've got internet access. If you can go to W5KUB.com, you can join us and watch the video and join us in the chat room. And would love to hear from you if you're out there on shortwave. We had a shortwave listener last week sent us an email. I forget where he was. He was in London, I think. London, Ohio. How about that for a shortwave, man? Anyway, hey, if you're out there on shortwave, send us an email to Tom at W5KUB.com. Let us know where you are there. The 40-meter net was not real great tonight. Man, band conditions weren't just real good tonight. We had a lot of static. Must be all these storms that have moved through here. But we had about 10 or 12 people check in, and we did okay tonight. I was talking to Martin Jute today, and seeing if Martin would come on the show tonight. And I didn't know this, but Martin has been in a hospital about 9 days. He's out now. He had a little surgery done, and Martin's doing okay and recovering. So maybe he'll be with us next week there. Our Facebook group, if you're not a member of our Facebook group, please join us. It's called Amateur Radio Roundtable, or it's called W5KUB. It's probably shorter just to type W5KUB and you'll find it. And we went over the 10,000 members in our Facebook group this week, so that was a good thing that we saw happen this week. I'll give you a little update later in the show about W5KUB-18. I will tell you that he has been up visiting Santa Claus for the last 5 to 7 days, but we'll get more into that later. Let's see, what am I forgetting here? I think that's probably about it there. Let's go out to Dave. See what Dave's been up to there. Dave, KE0OG. Hey, Dave, how you doing here, man?
I'm doing great. This is my latest toy.
Oh, wow.
It came to me from MFJ. It's actually on loan for a review. I've done one video on it so far, and it looks like a nice little radio. I've been playing with it, and I'm kind of setting ham radio aside just for the week because I hope to take my sport pilot written test this week. And so on Friday, I'll either be very happy or not. We'll find out which.
All right,
so that's what's going on here.
Good luck on that, and hope you do well on your test there.
Thank you.
And that little radio you got there, how do you pronounce that?
Well, I'll tell you how I pronounce it. Zygu.
Zygu?
And I know for a fact that is wrong. And the reason I know that is wrong is because that's the way I pronounce it, and I pronounce everything Chinese wrong. So I am sure
that is probably
in the chat room tonight who will provide the correct pronunciation.
Who is in the chat room?
Well, there'll be somebody out there who knows
yeah.
Chinese and will be able
to
provide the correct pronunciation.
It'll be interesting to see how they correct it in the chat room. They're going to have to use, I don't know, phonetics or something. I don't know how they do it.
Carrots and tildes.
Yeah. all right, man. Well, yeah. Hey, I'm going to look at a little radio too. Some of these little Japanese radios, the menus and stuff are, just terrible. But let us know how that one works out for you.
I'll do that. I'll be having some more videos on it. It's a 20 watt, all band HF, all mode radio. So it'll do CW, sideband, digital, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it does it in a very tiny little package. And so I've got a lot to learn about it, and I figure my Augies and I can learn together.
Well, and I tell you, 20 watts on sideband is just about the perfect level there. That radio will work good there. Let's jump over and see if we can keep the show on the rails. And you know that who I'm talking about now, bring in here next. That is our friend Glen Popiel, KW5GP. You there, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm here. I'll be good tonight. I'm actually starting to go back to work a little bit. I'm actually working 2 days this week.
Yeah.
Actually on the road. I've been working out of the house ever since like March, but starting to go back out on the road. And I saw where I think Florida basically ordered the schools to open this fall, which I think is going to be interesting to say the least. But we're preparing for some form of opening here in Mississippi, which means infrastructure's got to be put in place and working and stuff. So back to work a little bit.
Well, if you guys go to at-home school, remote schooling, is that going to make your job more difficult? Do you have to provide additional services, or?
I don't think anybody has a clue on how this is all going to shake out. When the cases started spiking in the Memphis area, and actually I think Tennessee and Mississippi last week, it was kind of like, oops, we didn't plan for this. They're planning on sort of a hybrid opening, which is rotating some kids through school and some at home. So I don't think anybody really knows just how it's going to shake out right now. It's a play it by ear.
All right. Well,
anyway,
what do you got there?
Dave's got the Chinese radio, and I'll do the pronunciation for you, Dave. Radio. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But,
No.
This is the Arduino Pioneer, and it's actually a shield, and it's basically a little development tool. It's got a 8 LED strip and a couple switches and everything. You can use this to do some prototyping with the Arduino, and it's all a little shield. And that's one of the things I'm going to be reviewing for QST, and I've got a couple more over on the other bench that's in the pipeline.
Well, you're our Arduino expert. I have a question. Why do they call it a shield?
I really don't know.
Uh-oh.
This was all created in northern Italy. The Arduino itself is named after King Arduin over there.
Oh.
And the town where it was developed, I think the bar was named the King Arduin Bar or something of that nature, and that's where they decided to come up with the name. The shield, I don't have a clue. You have to remember this thing was designed and used by artists and creators, not techie people.
Yeah.
So they may have just come up with something that looked right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, let's jump down toward our Huntsville friend. He's not in Huntsville. He's up in Tennessee, I think. How you doing, Mark?
Good evening, Tom. Yes, I'm just over the border in Fayetteville, Tennessee.
Man, you look sharper, man. You got your red shirt on. Your shack looks good. Your earphone, man, first class down here tonight. How's things been going?
It's been an interesting summer, to say the least, Tom. We never imagined having to cancel the Huntsville Hamfest. I remember getting a call from Jack Gerbs in March on a Sunday from, he's the chair of Dayton, and a sinking feeling in my heart, and I just couldn't imagine we would be in their shoes just a few months later. So
Yeah.
we're recovering. We're already planning for next year.
Well, that's good, and I'm ready for next year. We all got a little rest, we're going to be doing okay, and then we'll all be rested up next year. We'll have a good time up there. Well, hey, the Huntsville, Huntsville Amateur Radio Club is the one that puts on the Huntsville Hamfest, right?
Actually, it's a separate organization. The Huntsville Hamfest Association is a small team of board members.
That's right.
We rely almost exclusively on the Huntsville Amateur Radio Club to supply us with the approximately 120 volunteers.
That's right. I knew that. I knew that, Mark. What I was hoping to do, and I messed it up. I was going to try to lead into field day here with the Huntsville Amateur Radio Club. Now, the Huntsville Amateur Radio Club had field day, and you guys have been very successful the last, 8, 9, 10 years?
We've been successful forever. We've got records going back to before 2000. A predecessor of mine, a Silent Key N4 Kilo Gorilla, N4 KG, started a spreadsheet back when the club was operating 5A. Sometime around 15 years ago, we went to 4A, and we've excelled just about every year in everything we've tried. We've been first in the 4A category 9 times in the last 11 years. So we essentially rule the category.
Wow.
We get just about every available bonus point except for we cannot, for the life of us, get a visit by an elected official. It should seem easy for a town the size of Huntsville, Madison, but that category just eludes us.
Wow. That's hard to believe.
But this year was different, Tom.
Yeah.
Like I said, we normally run 4A, and we had a new field day chairperson this year, Laura, K4 Charlie November Yankee. She agreed to become our field day chairperson back around January. And of course, as we all know, mid-March, everything went sideways. The venue, the field we used out in front of the Marriott at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, well, the Space and Rocket Center was closed down. We couldn't even secure permission.
Yeah.
And we probably didn't want to do a public event. And we weren't sure about how many volunteers we would get. There were just so many unknowns, and Laura balanced a lot of things and came up with some alternatives. The club meets on Fridays via Zoom, just like this, and she presented some options, some opportunities, benefits and drawbacks, and we ended up deciding to operate 2A, a scaled down scope and effort. We operated 2A from a club member's blueberry farm up in Harvest, Alabama, which is a suburb just north of Madison, and it turned out to be a great location, and we learned a lot. We didn't use at the 4A station. We build 4 RON 50-foot towers, RON 25G. We fold them together on the ground, and then we use a trailer-mounted crank up, literally as a crane, to lift those with antenna wires and ropes, lift them up into position and put them on a prepared base that's driven into the ground. It takes 13 people to do that job successfully, and a lot of them are in close proximity. And we just thought this year it's probably not feasible or wise to do something like that. And so we scaled down our effort. We used push-up towers. We used a crank-up aluminum tower. So we got wire antennas fed with ladder line, so they were multi-band. We could have the phone station and the CW station operate on virtually any band. And that worked out well for us. We did also do we got the satellite station. Tim N8DEU is one of the AMSAT guys, very big into satellite work. He's operated ARIS contacts from schools in the Alabama area. He's very active, and he was very successful. I think he ended up with 120 QSOs via the various satellites. And he mentioned in his article some of the newer. One was a Russian bird, and I can't remember the other one. But he had a real good weekend. And of course, Gigaparts, they stepped up. They brought their band, which is basically a self-contained station, and a crank up, not a crank up, but a fixed mounted vertical, and they operated our GOTA station from a tent, and that went real well. We had a bonus VHF station. Actually, we had two. One of our main VHF guy, he's got an immune compromised relative, so he chose to operate from home. But to fulfill the rules, he set up his station and operated via an Ethernet link. The EMA provided us some kind of a Wi-Fi hotspot for a fringe area, and that box worked flawlessly. He used that to radio, or basically wire Wi-Fi into his radio that was at our site, and operated 6-meter FT8 for about 18 hours. He took a break, and then one of our local guys, he brought a truck-mounted another self-contained VHF station. They coordinated. When I say they coordinated this, it was down to the minute, because Todd didn't want to be off the air very long, but we needed to send those 2-meter outgoing NTS formatted messages to the section manager and various league officials, and we got all those bonus points. And then as soon as they were done, it took them 51 minutes of airtime to send out, I think, 15 or 16 messages. And once they did that, they turned it back over to Todd, and he continued to run.
So I guess
well coordinated.
I guess you get extra points for sending out messages, right?
Yes, NTS formatted messages. You get 100 points for sending one to the NTS section manager, and then you get some additional ones. I'm tasked with doing the score compilation, and what I'm doing now, I just finished a 23-page newsletter for the club with photos. It was a huge effort. So many people wrote in. We had 1D stations, and I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of folks contributed to this month's issue with the box newsletter, and it's a labor of love. I've been doing it about a dozen years, and it's just a lot of fun to memorialize what we did over the weekend. Well, you know, I
got a radiogram. Actually, I got a telephone call from a ham in Nashville that read a radiogram to me, and it was a question about our balloons. So I'm not sure what club or who sent that, but I guess we helped them get some extra points.
Oh, that's great. I've never received one. We've sent out a dozen or so every year, but I've never received one. But the Blueberry Farm, I gotta mention Gary, W9 SGM, Sergeant Major, he's retired Army. His farm was just fabulous. It was quiet, electrically quiet. It was dark at night. We did a site survey the week before, and decided we're going to need floodlights, because that area at the Space and Rocket Center, they've got parking lot lights. There's lights from the freeway. We didn't have any of that. And so we realized we're going to need some floodlights for this field, so folks don't trip over guy wires and antenna stuff. So that worked out really well. We had the satellite station, we had the bonus station, GOTA. It was just a regular field day. We operated 2A. But again, a lot of guys chose to operate from home. You know, hams are an older population. Just look at the guys in this Zoom tonight. We're not 20 anymore, and the risk for catching this COVID-19, the complications from it are elevated. So a lot of our veterans chose to operate from home. And after I helped with setup on Friday, I came home, and on Saturday morning I went back, and Saturday afternoon ran a little bit there, and we struggled. The phone station, we started out on 20 meters, and it was just it was bedlam. The bands were packed. We tried 40 meters. It was just not our same performance. We were not getting the QSO rates that we had in years past, and folks didn't know what was going on. Was it the antennas? Was it the height of the antennas? Was it the radio? We had so many questions. And I went home that night and operated from home for about an hour. And then Sunday morning, I operated again for 2 hours. And from my home station with 100 watts, a tri-bander, and wire antennas for 40 and 80, I made 352 contacts. That's 117 an hour. That's not extreme. I ran 170 something in the ARRL Centennial. but it told me that the bands were fine. The issue was when I did a statistical analysis of the log after field day, my home log, 51% of the QSOs were 1 delta stations, and fully 80% of the QSOs were to 1 category 1X, 1A, 1B, 1C, etc. 80% of the stations were from home. And so people operating from home, maybe running power, hopefully not. Like I said, I ran 100 watts, and a lot of folks were just running, home stations with efficient antennas, not like your field day sites where you typically have slightly compromised antennas or maybe generator noise. You don't have your own headphones. Maybe the radio is not dialed in for your voice. There's a myriad of issues that could come to play in an emergency deployment. So that was interesting. It was so interesting that I felt compelled to write because after field day, if you follow the forum posts on QRZ or EHAM, a lot of folks were bashing the league for allowing the 1D to 1D contacts this year. Some were in support, some were not. So I wrote a letter to Paul, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Baroque, N1 Sierra Fox Echo. He's the ARRL contest branch manager, and I copied our Delta Division Director, Dave Norris, he's a big-time contester too. He's out in Arkansas. But, I mentioned my take on what they did, and I think, in my opinion, what the league did this year was the right decision. It allowed folks to participate. It made things different. I think it made things difficult for the field stations, but we made contacts. The QSOs that the phone station made, typically we'll do 1,200 QSOs in a day, or in the 24-hour period from our phone stations. I won't divulge the antennas we use for field day. That's a trade secret.
All right.
But this year, using a different antenna that was not as good, using a different radio, using a lower antenna, we only managed 502 QSOs, which is a huge delta to what we were used to in the past. Now, here's the other side of that coin, the CW station. The CW station, they typically run also about 1,200 Qs per year. Well, this year they shattered that record with almost 1,700 QSOs. So the bands were in good shape. But the problem was there were so many people on the bands, especially the low bands, that it was tough to make contacts.
Well, and I'm guessing, if you really look at the number of people that actually set up field day locations, compare that now with the number of people working from home, there's just a lot more stations on.
I haven't looked at the numbers that the league has posted. Folks have until July 28th to upload their logs, but I'm guessing that the final count will be much, much higher than what it's been in years past as far as station participation.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting weekend for us. We learned a lot, and we learned what we can do better next year if we have to do a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, what you're going to want to look at your statistics also is the locations of your contacts, particularly on, the sideband. We had a tunnel into Texas and Florida and really nothing anywhere else. And I can assure you I worked every station in North Texas and South Texas that I think was on the air.
Glenn, that would be a good thing to look at. I did just do a visual scan of the logs. I haven't processed them fully yet, but I'm seeing typical E-skip conditions where we had 1,200-mile contacts to the northeast, Midwest, into Texas, into Florida. And so we were using inverted V's this year for more or less omni coverage. And typically the E-skip cloud may favor one direction or another, but that's about what we saw here.
Yeah, and you're going to have to pay me off to keep quiet because I've driven by your field day location multiple times because that's the weekend of the Huntsville Cat Show as a general rule. And so I've been over there in North Huntsville during field day. I almost stopped by a couple of times, but when we do the cat shows, we're too tired to do anything else. But I've seen your setup, and it's quite impressive over there.
It was Dave Drummond, our Alabama section manager, who did a site visit a couple of years ago. He simply wrote in the ARRL comments, he said, "Field day done right. These guys know what they're doing." It was pretty applicable.
All right. Well, hey, Mark, thanks so much for giving us a quick update on how you guys worked out this year. It's interesting. It was different.
It was different,
yeah.
And it was also fun. We did manage our hospitality guy from our Ham Fest. He and his wife handled the burgers, the Saturday afternoon picnic. He wore color-coded gloves. He wore a blue glove on one hand and a red glove on the other. And I've got a picture of him. I don't know what he was doing with the two different hands, but he kept everybody safe, and we had fun. And
that's cool.
We actually had a picnic.
That's cool.
We thought about doing catered food, but in the end, we grilled hamburgers outside.
Well, that's probably a benefit there. Probably a lot of people at home wouldn't have that, So at least, the atmosphere and the cookout, So that's cool. That's always one of the fun things I like about field day is the cookouts. I go for the food.
But for me, the 1 delta to 1 delta contacts, they're a contact. It's field day. Let's have fun. I'm not going to discriminate on what the contact is. Just give me the numbers.
And that's exactly what I did, Glenn. When I operated from home or from the field day site, I was running stations. I didn't care who called. If I picked up the call sign, I put them in the line.
Exactly.
All right. Well, hey, Mark, thanks so much again, and feel free to stick around with us as long as you want to tonight.
Yeah, Tom, I'll stick around for a while. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. And hey, Glenn has his Bazinga shirt on. Glenn?
There you go.
The Bazinga shirt looks pretty good on you,
Yeah, I lost enough weight, and it really fits good.
All right, man. Well, hey, I'm glad, dear. And hey, everybody out there, you'll have to go back to one of our shows about 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, it was longer than that.
Oh, was it? We had Glenn here, and we had our virtual. What do we call it? Our virtual.
I don't know, but it was a virtual remote entity that we had John Amadeo from The Last Man Standing.
We brought him into a little robot that had a Bazinga shirt on, and the monitor was John Amadeo's face was on there, so it was kind of funny, and we had a good time. All right, well, guys, let's see. Okay, well, just stand by a minute, and we're gonna we're going to talk with Dave here. He's got a video we're going to look at. I think it's going to be real exciting. It's we'll tell you about it in just a minute. Get out and be active with Icom's new IC-705 and its optional multifunction backpack. The IC-705 is your perfect QRP rig as you have base station features at the tip of your fingers in a portable package covering HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at just over 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF bands and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. And it has a large 4.3-inch color touchscreen with a live band scope and waterfall. Additional features include 5 watts with the BP272, 10 watts with 13.8 volts, SSB, CW, AM, FM, as well as D-Star. It has a micro USB connector and Bluetooth, integrated GPS with antenna and GPS logger. It has a micro SD card slot. The HM243 speaker mic comes standard, and it supports QRP operations. The perfect accessory is the optional backpack. It's the LC192. It has a special compartment for your IC-705. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on Icom radios. And don't forget, you should register for QSO Today's groundbreaking virtual ham expo. This expo will be filled with virtual exhibits and great speakers, all from the convenience of your computer, tablet, or smartphone. Visit QSO Today, hamexpo.com to register. All right, and we are back here with the group, and let's go out to Dave here. I think Dave's got a neat little video here I want to run for Dave. Dave, I was looking at some of your videos the other day, and I saw one where you actually were showing people that you can actually measure power with an oscilloscope. You want to tell us a little about that?
Well, I had one of the viewers on one of my live streams ask me if it was possible to measure power out on a radio with an oscilloscope, and of course it is. And so I did a little setup and did some power measurements and made this little video to show how it's done.
All right, well, let's take a listen and look at it here. I've got it right here. So here let's see, I've got it right here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it now. All right, you guys are going to have to stand by
out of your trash file now.
I can't find it.
Are we going to have to ad lib and stuff while you're trying to find this thing?
Yeah, you may have to. Yeah, you guys go ahead and talk while I look for this thing, okay? Because I've got so many video shots here, I don't remember where it is.
Well, if you'll indulge me, I'll address Glen's comments during the break about why Huntsville canceled. There were so many competing things going on. We had a question, like I mentioned earlier, we needed 120 volunteers to support the event, and we weren't sure we would get them. The visitors, of course, the average age of hams is 60. That puts them in a high-risk group, and we had no way of knowing if we threw open the doors how many people would show up on Saturday and Sunday. The venue, that was the big thing. We met with the Von Braun Center 1 week prior when the CDC and the state of Alabama distancing rules and traffic flow were dictated to us. We spent almost a week over angsting over the layout options and different scenarios for the layout. Best case, we were looking at a huge loss. Worst case, we could have gone bankrupt. And we're nonprofit. We operate on a break-even basis. And lastly, it was the vendors. We started. It has to be worth their while. You know, if a vendor is going to spend the money to travel from Texas or California or even Georgia to attend a show, they want to make sure that that there's going to be enough foot traffic in front of their booth to make it worth their while. And in the week prior, I went to my first ever gun and knife show at the South Hall. It was the first event they had this year with the social distancing rules. And their organizers told me that 75 of their 250 vendors pulled out at the last minute. So we were looking at that downside risk too. So there's so many things that, and we decided to give everybody advance notice. We didn't want to wait until the last minute because we didn't see things changing. And in hindsight, that was good. I learned today Stone Mountain canceled their November. And so let's not keep everybody hanging. Let's get bad news out there and get over it.
I agree with you. It was the right decision. I was just saying I was disappointed that it had to happen. Yeah. That's always been one of my favorites, but I fully agree. And in fact, at field day, I had to get out to the park. I mean, I'm tired of sitting at home and stuff, but I operated all by myself with no logger and made sure everybody stayed away from me because I'm in just about every high-risk category you've got. So, but I was going to do field day one way or another. So, but no, I fully agree with you, and you have my 100% support. I'm just so sad to see it not happen this year because I was saying, ooh, maybe they'll be able to do it because it'll be after all this is over. Nope, didn't happen.
All right, guys, I found the video. I've got the video. Actually, I reloaded it, so I think it didn't get saved earlier. But anyway,
you didn't find it, Tom? We gave you all that time.
Well, hey, it didn't take me but 1 minute. You guys y'all are real winded, you know what?
Long-winded.
But that's long-winded, yeah. Long-winded. All right, well, stand by. This is here we get to see Ask Dave here. Here we go. Oh, let's see.
Which number that is?
280 something, I think. I don't know.
280. Yeah, I just put out 296 yesterday.
Yeah. So here we go. Here we go, guys.
Hi, I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with episode number 289 of Ask Dave. In today's video, we're going to answer a question from one of our Augies, and the question was this: can you use an oscilloscope to measure the power output of a transceiver? And the answer is absolutely yes, and I'm going to demonstrate that. Now, we note that an oscilloscope is fundamentally a voltmeter, And yes, it's voltage versus time, so you can get a waveform and look at it and so on. But in addition to just looking at the waveform or showing its shape, an oscilloscope can actually measure the voltage, as is the case with my Regal DS1054 Zulu scope. It gives a nice set of measurements. So what we're going to do is put a test setup together for how to do this. I'm going to use the Micro BITX as the transmitter. We'll do CW and a dummy load. I've got a good dummy load that's an old Heathkit Cantenna. And we're going to use an MFJ watt meter and SWR meter just to be absolutely sure that we've got a nice one-to-one SWR going into that artificial dummy load. Let's take a look. We're going to measure the power output of a QRP rig using an oscilloscope and a dummy load. Now, the test setup that I have here assumes that we have a 50 ohm resistive load. The scope results, remember the waveform, we're going to have to remember to convert that to RMS, and then we'll do some calculations to get from RMS voltage to the power out. This is the test setup. I have the Micro BITX right here. This is a QRP rig. It comes out of India at hfsigs.com. We're going to do it in CW mode, so I've got a little key here, and that way the transmitter is either on or off. The main signal path is from the Micro BITX to the MFJ 849 SWR and power meter, and then from there over to my old Heathkit Cantenna dummy load, which is a very nice and well-behaved dummy load for HF. Now there's a tap up here, and I put a high impedance input from the tap to the Regal DS1054 Zulu oscilloscope, which is a 50 megahertz oscilloscope, and we're going to be working at 40 meters, which is 7 megahertz. This tap is very short compared to a wavelength, and we're not going to be changing impedances around a whole lot to use that. This is what the test setup looks like. We've got the Micro BITX here. Note that version 1.6 now comes with a nice case and a nice display board. The Bioenno battery is powering the Micro BITX, and here's the little MFJ key for the Micro BITX. Here is the watt meter. The Duracell battery back here is powering the watt meter, and then the output of the watt meter goes up here to the Cantenna, which is a gallon paint can with a 50 ohm resistive non-inductive load, and the whole thing is sitting in mineral oil so it can dissipate heat. This thing can stand up to 200 watts pretty much continuously. Over here is the scope. There's a tap coming out of the back of here going to the scope, and the scope is all set up so that up here at the top we do all sorts of measurements on the waveform, and you'll see all of that in a moment. Here's a quick close-up of the Micro BITX, and we're using the simple little straight key. Here is the MFJ watt meter. By the way, this is measuring under transmit. I'm transmitting while taking this picture. It's a one-to-one SWR going into the dummy load. It's a perfect load. 5.92 watts is what it measures. I've got it on the HF setting. This is the Cantenna. It's 50 ohms up to 200 watts continuous. I've had this for many, many years, and it continues to work just fine. There's really nothing in it to wear out. This is the tap on the back of the Micro BITX. It's a BNC connector. The power direction comes out of the Micro BITX here and goes off over to the right to the dummy load. Over to the left, it's seeing a very high impedance load at the scope, and the piece of coax is so short that it, relative to 40 meters, that it does not introduce any weirdnesses. This is what we see on the scope. You see the sine wave down here. What's more important are a couple things. One, we can measure the frequency here. The actual carrier is 70729, or about 7.073 megahertz. And we've got our voltage peak to peak here, and just under this is the voltage RMS. Now, if we take just the screen and invert it so that it's a negative, of course, instead of yellow, we get blue, but we can see a lot better what's going on here. The two measurements that are of interest are the peak-to-peak voltage, which is measuring is 52, but more important, the RMS voltage, which it is measuring is 18.2. Now, if you take 52 and do the conversion to get to RMS, it'll be actually slightly more than this, but there is noise on the signal. And what the scope is measuring is the actual peak, and the actual peak, the average peak, and the algorithm that it uses to convert to RMS gives you this value here, which is a little bit more accurate. And I'm going to take this value, 18.2 volts, and we're going to go from there. So with that value, let's compute power. Again, we're assuming a 50 ohm load, and we're pretty close. This is Ohm's law equals IR. We can divide both sides by R, and we get I equals E over R. Power, of course, is the voltage times the current. We can substitute I equals ER, so we can put E over R here, and we have power is E squared over R. This is the power law. And then the RMS voltage, we measured it at 18.2 with R is 50. So we have, calculating E squared over R, 18.2 squared over 50, or 331.24 over 50 is 6.62 watts. So that is the output of the transceiver. Note that the MFJ 849 watt meter said 5.92. That is a difference of 12%. Now that's not a big error, considering ham radio test equipment is not laboratory grade. However, when you get in to start talking about an oscilloscope, and a pretty popular one at that, that's much closer to a lab instrument. So I'm going to believe the oscilloscope more, that my power is really closer to 6.6 watts rather than 5.9. Some closing thoughts. The oscilloscope is a good way to measure power if you have a dummy load you can trust. Don't use an antenna as a load, because the antenna will have some reactance and that will throw off the measurements. I was also asked the question of what voltage would you be putting across the oscilloscope if you did this for a 100 watt output. Well, 100 watts is V squared over R, and considering R is 50, we can multiply both sides by 50. So we get 5,000 equals V squared, or V equals 70.7 volts RMS. Now that's 100 volts peak or 200 volts peak to peak. A lot of oscilloscopes will go up to 300 volts peak to peak. So yes, you can use the scope to measure in these circumstances, but do be careful, because 300 volts of RF power will give you a nasty bite. So bottom line, yes, this method works. Well, there you have it. It is absolutely possible to measure power out, even on a 100 watt rig, with an oscilloscope. And it will give you a more accurate value of the power out to a dummy load than you might get just using a watt meter or something like that. However, note that a dummy load and your antenna are two different things. So how much power you actually get out to your real antenna depends on a lot of factors, like SWR, the impedance of the antenna, whether it's matched properly, so on and so forth. So you could measure the voltage out to a real antenna, but real antennas are weird looking things. They've got reactance in places we don't expect it, and you won't get an absolutely accurate reading, but you can come close. Usually what your watt meter on your rig tells you is within 10%, and that's probably good enough.
All right, guys. Well, that was interesting there. So, Dave, are you going to start? You going to throw away your watt meters now, and use your scope to measure your power?
Well, I did notice one thing, that MFJ watt meter I had reads low. And I suppose I should try to calibrate it a little bit more. I have measured QRP rigs power output with this before. That's where I noticed that I used the micro BITX for this particular video. That thing does not produce anywhere near the 10 watts it says that it produces. But it was, I just wanted to illustrate the principle. I mean, it all comes down to a basic application of Ohm's law. And you figure out, and you've also got to point out the difference between peak voltage, peak-to-peak voltage, and RMS voltage, because Ohm's law wants you to use RMS voltage. And yeah, came up with the video, seemed to be a popular one. So I'm glad people liked it. I try to do videos that people can find useful, or try to emulate, or just go have some fun with.
Well, that's cool. I've got a scope here. I need to use it for a lot more than I do. And so, you know, some things only a scope will work. So.
Well, the scope is very convenient because you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
I was working with a direction finder that I have that uses time difference of arrival. And it's powered by a square wave, and I thought it was the square wave. I had no way of not knowing it wasn't. And I noticed that the thing had a bias to it. It didn't point right at the Fox, it would point off to the side. And I put it on the scope to try and figure out what was going on, and lo and behold, the square wave was on for 2/3 of its period and off for 1/3 of its period. And so each one side would get 2/3 of the time, the other side 1/3 of the time. Explained my bias. I adjusted it so it was equal, and suddenly the thing was working again. You could never have seen that without an oscilloscope.
All right. Well, you know what? We're going to open the phone lines because in a minute I'm going to give you just a quick update on the balloon, and then we're going to open the phone lines so we can get some precipitation from the group out there.
Yeah, just how cold is your balloon right now?
How cold? It's about -70. That'd be about a -101 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, guys, stand by. We'll talk about that next. We'll be right back here.
LDG Electronics provides state-of-the-art antenna tuners for every amateur need. From QRP to QRO, fixed stations, portable and remote, an LDG tuner will match your radio to your antenna using our lightning-fast, proprietary tuning algorithms. LDG is a family-owned and operated company dedicated to bringing innovative, quality products to the amateur market. All LDG products carry a full 2-year warranty that is fully transferable. Support is only a phone call or email away. We're always here to help you. Visit us on the web at ldgelectronics.com.
All right, we're back here. Let's see what we can do here. Let me get me on here. All right, I want to give you an update on on our balloon. Oh, by the way, the LDG, it reminds me, I was just talking to our friends at LDG this week, and man, we got a couple new products out. And I'm trying to get them on the show here. We'll talk about their products and a few things. So maybe that's coming up soon. One of the things I want to do, and I've had a request for it, is to take just a small, inexpensive auto tuner, and we want to just load up and show how you can use gutters on your house, or the screen door, or a piece of wire over the roof. I mean, you know, with a little auto tuner, you can tune just about anything, and it really makes life easy. So instead of me going out and buying a $200 antenna somewhere, I really just buy a $200 antenna tuner, and that way I can work all bands, and you know, I kind of like it. I've got one of the MFJ 1.5 kilowatt tuners, and that sucker's pretty big, and it's something you don't move around, so I've just got it kind of fixed in place on my 40 meter extended double zip out there. All right, let's talk about the balloon here real quick. Let me see if I can bring up some things. We have been all week, we have been up in the Arctic Circle, we've been in the Arctic Circle, and I'm trying to figure out where this sucker is and how we're going to get it
It
back.
looks like a Smith chart.
Yeah, and how we're going to get it back. Let me see if I can just find some things here real quick to show you what we're facing here. I'll just go here real quick. Here's basically, we almost got to the finish line. The little red vertical line's the finish line. And about 150 or 200 miles out, we turned and we went north. Now the blue, I've added the blue there because that was during the nighttime where there's no transmissions. But you can see the curvature. Did we make third lap or did we not make third lap? We don't know. So it went up to the Northwest Territory. It went up to the Arctic Circle. And but it will come around, it will cross the finish line, and we'll officially count that as the third lap. So let me just scroll through here and see if I can find a couple more pictures. Here is a picture of, here's a picture of one picture where it was. You can see there we've got the 3 laps around the world there, and then you can see it went up to, actually past, it went past the magnetic pole, the North Pole. It went past it. So we're flying at very slow speeds up there. You know, the ants, in fact, Dave was just mentioning the ants. We have a proclamation there. We just awarded the ants there 2 different awards. One of the awards is the, let's see if I can read it here. It's the Golden Dragon. The Golden Dragon is something that's awarded to a person when they cross the international date line. Now they've crossed it twice, so we gave them the Golden Dragon Award. The other award there, oh wait, we got somebody joining us here. Let me get him in here. The other award there is the Order of the Blue Moose. No, not Blue Moose. Is that the Blue Nose? Yeah, let me get this right, 'cause I've never got this myself. This is the Order of the Blue Nose, and that's if you go into the Arctic Circle, you get that award. So we gave Sergeant Huey and Major Dewey those 2 awards there. Bill Brown, are you joining us? Bill? I don't hear Bill.
You know, Tom, are you going to take away a promotion if they end up going around the world backwards?
Well, you know, I don't know. Someone asked me that. I doubt it. You know, and you know, our plan is each lap they make, we're going to promote them one grade, and we're gonna have fun doing it. So you can see up here in the Northwest Territory, the Arctic Circle here. You can see we're just floating around up there making circles, and we're doing figure 8s and stuff like that. Up here in the Northwest Territory, the Arctic Circle here. Somebody has their audio turned up. Maybe it's Bill. All right.
Some fun audio echoes here.
Yeah, somebody, it may have been Bill, when he came on, may have had his web, you know, the URL up. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Hey, doing good. Sorry about the feedback.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
The program going on another screen.
So I know you were driving.
We just got back from a trip to Ohio.
Yeah.
So, and we were watching as the ants decided to go to the North Pole.
Yeah.
They didn't quite make it, but they were pretty close.
Well, I think they actually went north of the magnetic pole. Actually, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So let me go back on here, this kid, and give everybody kind of a recap of kind of where we've been. And hey, glad you made it in tonight. I knew you were traveling. So, you know, we've looked at various predictions, and they're good for about 80 hours. We have no idea where stuff's going, but it's kind of fun to try to guess where these things are going. So we've been up in the Arctic Circle. We're trying to get back down. There's not much wind up there. Here's the kind of stuff we deal with here. We don't know where it's going. These are various models here that show the balloon and possibilities of where it might go. And I don't know. Sometimes it's pretty accurate, actually, and that's what's worrying me. Sometimes it's pretty accurate. So there's another one here with it up in the Arctic Circle, and you know, there it could have come down over Alaska, or it could have gone out over to the Pacific. I mean, to the Atlantic. And I was hoping it was going to go to the Atlantic, but no, it didn't do it. It came down in Alaska. I ran, Bill, I'm not an expert on this, but I figured out how to run the ready high split model, I think. And I ran the high split model right there. And right now we're just at the bottom of Alaska, and I ran this model, and look at this. It's almost going to come down and go back up, according to this. And then it's going to make another little circle, and then it's going to head east. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to take us 4 or 5 days to figure out what's going to happen. Now, Bill, you're the expert here.
I think your sky ants are loopy.
Something is wrong up there. Something is wrong. So
your rudder is stuck.
Yeah, it's like full right rudder or something. I don't know, man, or full left rudder. And let me ask Dave a question on that real quick. Dave, you're studying to get your pilot's license there. When you take off, do you do like a full right rudder?
Oh heavens, no.
Full left rudder? No.
You get very little rudder.
Really? Some of the pilot where I used to live over in Arkansas, we had a crop dusting deal there, you know, and they flew those air tractors. And they would actually take off. They would have to use like full right rudder.
Well, if you're doing a crosswind or something,
they would do a full right rudder. And then he got a Russian plane, and the prop turned opposite.
Oh no, that's weird.
And so the prop turned opposite, so they had to use full left rudder on takeoff.
Well, I'm surprised they'd use full rudder on takeoff. There's something fishy going on there.
Yeah.
Sure, it's rudder and not aileron or something?
No, it was rudder, and
well, if you're going down the runway and there's a crosswind, while you're still on the ground, you pull the yoke all the way over.
Yeah.
But that's the ailerons, and then you better get that back centered when you lift off, or you're going to flip.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just something about the air tractor that the props caused it to want to
There's something
turn or something on you there.
Comes from the prop, the
yaw or whatever you call it.
It's all fun and complicated, and it's not in the extra manual, so I won't talk
about it. Yeah, right. Okay, well, maybe I'm sure we have a professional pilot on here. If we had Walter here, we'd ask him, but he flies jets, so I don't know. It might be a little different.
Well, all of this happened when they got over the Canadian border.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking they've been into the antifreeze just a little bit too much, and they're going to have to sober up before they can straighten up and fly right.
Well, our board of directors met today about this flight, and we're considering trying to get the Air Force to shoot them down if they don't kind of come back down this way. We're not sure they're even alive up there. We're not sure they're alive.
Over the North Pole for years. Mark, are you familiar with the balloon that he sent up? Did you? You were asking a question earlier about what he used.
Well, I've attended many of Bill's presentations, both locally in Huntsville and the Dayton forums, and I remember some mention of a steel wire guitar string.
Yeah, we use some guitar string.
Dealing with here?
Yeah, we use some guitar string.
Okay, so my question is,
this particular one, Mark. I use the number 13 gauge guitar string for the antenna wires for the 2-meter version, but on the HF version for the Whisper, this is 17 feet up and 17 feet down of a magnet wire and fishing line.
Okay, so my theory of for lack of wind, it's being attracted to the North Magnetic Pole.
Oh yeah.
Discount that.
Well, Bill, Bill, on some of the previous flights that we did, we have documented here. We actually held the little glass solar panels on with with guitar wire. It was stiff enough to actually solder the little panels on, and it went out on each side. Kind of looked like the space station, you know.
I'm going to run your prediction.
Yeah,
and
run it and see if you can figure out where it's going, man.
give you the best idea of where their next.
Yeah, I kind of have an idea that we're going to go back up into Canada now. I just hope it's some way we can get out of that and back down in the jet stream.
Well, didn't you
It's
mention?
pretty strange this time of year. The jet stream breaks apart, goes in circles, sometimes goes backwards. I could launch something from here and it could go to California this time of year. July and August in particular.
And of course, that's the wrong way for us. That's the wrong way. Let's see if I
You
get.
could do a retrograde orbit in the opposite
Yeah.
direction.
Let me see if I can get the
remember
phone.
Bill launching a balloon at Field Day. It went over to Georgia and came back.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that one was actually at the Huntsville Hamfest.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
I launched that with all in attendance about noon. 4 hours later, went 80 miles east to the Georgia line. Of course, that was at Huntsville, Alabama's at the Huntsville Hamfest. And just as the Hamfest was closing for the day, it went back directly over us 4 hours later at 108,000 feet floating, and went all the way to Texas
It's
overnight.
amazing.
And my friends in Abilene, Texas went out and they found it, and I got it back.
All right, hey guys, the phone lines are open. 712-775-7270. You got to put the little secret code in there and hit the pound. Or maybe that's the hash. When I grew up, we called it the pound sign. What is it? Is it still a
Depends on
pound
what
sign?
generation you are.
Is it still a pound sign?
I call it a pound sign, but it's a hashtag now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure there's some formal grammatical term for it that none of us have ever used.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're waiting on a caller. Come on, callers. Well, we're getting a vote in the chat room. There's another one for pound sign. So, pound sign is winning right now.
Now, Tom, didn't you say there was another balloon that went up that way to the Arctic Circle and it just kind of vanished off the radar for several months, then finally
Bill,
back up?
Bill may have more information on it. That's Mel, Bill, W8MV. It's still flying, I guess, right, Bill?
As far as I know, I don't know for sure. We haven't heard from that one for a long
But
time.
it goes up in the dark for like 30 days at a time and disappears, and then it comes back out. And when I say dark, I mean it goes into the non-transmit mode up, I'm guessing up in Antarctica now. It's daylight up there most of the day, but the sun is very, very low, and that's not great for us.
Yeah, the problem is the solar
Yeah.
angle is still only operational for about 8 hours or so in the Arctic. It's daylight all day long, but it can get pretty low solar angle around midnight or so. It's only about 5 degrees elevation, so it's not enough to power your tracker. So your particular tracker that you put together needs a lot.
Hey,
higher
we've got
solar angle.
we have Roy on the phone. Let me see if I can do something here. Dude, yeah, how's that? That's better. Okay. Hey, we've got Roy on the phone. Hey, Roy, how you doing? Roy? Where's Roy? Hello, Roy. Well, Roy's on the phone, but I don't hear him.
I just ran your prediction, by the way.
Okay. Well, can you share it for us?
Well, the looks like your prediction shows that it'll be crossing the third lap on July 11th in the around noontime.
Is that through Canada, I guess, right?
It's going to go right along the Canadian border and then go back up into Canada.
Yeah.
And but it should cross your longitude around 90 degrees on the 11th. in the afternoon.
Okay, well, cool. Cool.
So it'll take a few days, but it's gonna come down and cross over Seattle in the next 2 days. 2 days from now, it'll be over Seattle. Then it'll cut across Alberta and Saskatchewan, and go up to Hudson Bay, the southern end of Hudson Bay.
Yep.
That's right where across the line for the third lap.
Yep.
Then you're going to Greenland.
Oh, well, Greenland might not be too bad. I mean, we should come back.
Northern Greenland. You're going to cross the entire Greenland from south to north.
And then
So
will we
back up towards the North Pole again?
toward the North Pole again?
Groundhog Day. It's going to be 6 more weeks of winter.
Oh man, I was hoping, and when we got to Greenland, it would at least go down toward the UK.
It
Well, what
might.
we're going to find out is that the ants actually bailed out when it went down near Hawaii, and they tied the rudder down, and that sucker broke loose, and all you're seeing now is free flight.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know why we are not hearing Roy here. Things should be working. Roy, say something, Roy. Okay, I see Roy talking. Hey, the little green line's moving, so Roy is talking. Roy is talking.
Tom just has to figure out which button slide.
Roy is talking. Hey, Roy, say hello, Roy.
Hello, Roy.
I was
Okay, so Roy is talking. Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Well, no. I got to figure out why.
Throw the third switch, Tom.
Well, you know how Microsoft is. You got all these ins and outs and all that stuff in their new setup now, or their new settings. I've got the volume turned up.
I still prefer this over Skype.
I agree.
Well, but this is working. But he's coming in on the phone line, and I've got the phone turned up. I see him talking on the monitor, on the meter, but he's not getting through. That's strange. Okay, well, can't really. Wait a minute. Look. I think I found a problem. Let me show you. See if I can put the camera on me here. Watch this. Let me find a camera. Do you see this right here? Do you see this?
Yeah.
It's hanging loose. And this is the input to the phone.
Oh, that's a one-ended wire.
Yeah, this is the input to the phone. Let me find the other piece here, and let's see if we can't plug it in. Man.
Tom, without the correct voltage, you cannot get electrons to run across the top of the table.
Man, I've got to figure out. Let's see. Well, heck.
Unless it's about 50,000.
This may not. I bet you. Hey, I bet you it might go right here. Look. Let's see what happens. All right. Roy, are you there, Roy?
Hey, this is KI-7PKL. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. Oh man.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, we can hear you. You know what? Again, that was a Microsoft update. It did that. I know it was.
Yeah, I don't use Microsoft very much, so I don't have that excuse. You know, if something happens in my shipback, it's probably just me.
Man. All right. Hey,
This is why
tell me.
you need cats. I could blame all of that on the cats.
All right. Hey, which Roy is this?
There you go.
Hey, which Roy? Roy, are you the guitar player?
This is KI-7PKL, Roy, out in Portland. Yeah, I play I'm actually a bass player.
So you're my bass player, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know who you are. I know. Didn't we have you on a show? No, on Hangout one night, and you played something for us.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, that's me. Long white hair and everything. Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to say something. Been waiting to say this for a few weeks. The thrill of shortwave listening is not dead. I tell you, I monitored it all. You started around across the Pacific that first time around, and I had my whisper going on here, and sure enough, I picked your little 6 or whatever milliwatt signal up with my station. I was thrilled to pieces.
All right.
And I've picked it up all 3 times around now, and what a thrill.
Well, cool.
I've had so much fun with this thing every day, getting up in the morning. Where's Tom's balloon today? You know, oh, it's off on the... I figured you were being like Captain Kirk, you know, seeking out and exploring strange new worlds where none of the ants have ever been before. So here's to the ants.
Well, we've got to build some way to have two-way contact with those guys, really. I mean, they need some direction sometimes.
I just want to see you pull the captain's log on that thing.
Yeah. Hey, let's see. Let's see who else. We got somebody else on the phone. We got James on there. Hey, James, how you doing?
Yes, this is Jim in Toledo, Texas, at 5FKW.
FKW? And give me your call again, Jim.
Yes, sir. November 5, Foxtrot Kilo Whiskey, N5FKW.
Okay, I got you there. Hey, man, N5 FKW, Jim. Your phone ID says James, so excuse me. How you doing?
That's okay. I'm calling everything. I'm doing just great. I just wanted to call and say I'm really enjoying the program tonight, and everything that you're doing with the balloon is something else. Now, I guess you're doing all that circling around up there, but anyway, I wanted to kind of give you a heads up on when you take off in an airplane. I'm a pilot.
Yeah.
And the right rudder that you're talking about, you need that when you take off, because the engine, when it picks up a certificate going around, it automatically pulls the plane to the left.
Yeah.
So that's with the high-powered planes. You have to use the right rudder to get it.
So that's what I was describing. Yeah, I guess I was describing a high-powered plane where Dave flies the little rubber band ones. He doesn't have to do the right full rudder, does he?
Well, you don't do full right rudder. You do a little right rudder.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess it's you don't have the horsepower that I'm used to, Dave. These were some and hey Jim, Jim.
Bungee band.
Yeah. Hey, so Jim, have you ever seen one of the Russian planes where the prop went the opposite direction?
I sure did. I've seen quite a few of those, but mostly on videos where our Air Force is chasing them around up there around Alaska where your balloon is.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed all that time. I had this friend that had this crop dusting service, and he flew air tractors, and then he got that Russian plane also. So that's kind of where I kind of got associated with the air tractor and those things. And I actually I set up a commercial repeater farm over there. But it was kind of neat. I lived maybe a mile or two from his airstrip there, and when I had a 1 acre yard over there, and when I get ready to fertilize my yard, I'd just take my pickup truck over there, and they'd put me a 55-gallon barrel in the back, and they would fill it full of nitrogen? What do you call it?
Ammonium nitrate?
Well,
fertilizer.
Yeah, with fertilizer. In fact, he even fertilized my yard one time coming back from a job. He had the fertilizer in the plane, and that plane was pretty good. It could do a 150-foot strip wide, and he came in at the house there, and he turned that thing on, and it covered my yard. My yard was 150 by 330, and he covered the yard. I could just see the stuff rolling off the roof of the house, like little speckles of sleet, and then a little bit got in the pool, of course, but I don't guess I heard anything. But hey, in 1 second, man, I had my whole yard fertilized.
That's the way to go. That's the way to get it
done. Yeah. Well, so you've been following our balloon, and we've been having a lot of fun with it. Although I think it's getting a little boring. Do you think people are starting to lose interest in it?
Hey, Tom.
No, I think the interest has really gone up higher because it wants to know where it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to mention that we have a big annual balloon conference about balloons carrying amateur radio. It's called Super Lunch, and usually it's in, it was supposed to be in Omaha, Nebraska this year, but due to the COVID situation, they had to cancel the conference call. We usually have about 100 people attending it from all over the country. But this year, so they've decided as an alternative, they're going to do an online Zoom event. So if you go to superlaunch.org, you can register, and it's free this year. And they will send this Friday from 9 a.m. Central. It was supposed to be in Omaha this year, but not next year. It's the Omaha group decided to do it as a virtual Zoom.
So it won't be there next year.
Mentioned that. Joe K0NEB asked that question. So Friday from 9 a.m. Central till about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, there will be a variety of talks. I'm giving a talk in the afternoon. Joanne AM6BWB, who did the balloon race that she was on a couple weeks ago, she's going to give a talk about that. And ought to be some interesting topics. And then what we're planning to do is using Zoom on Saturday to coordinate upwards of a dozen balloon launches simultaneously, all coordinated to the time zone. So in other words, it'll be like 8 in the morning in the Pacific and 11 in the East Coast and all in between, but we're going to coordinate them with a bunch of split Zoom screens here showing all the launches simultaneously. Because we normally on a Saturday, we would gather in a field or an airport and launch all our balloons at once, and it's always quite a sight. So we're going to do it by Zoom this year. So
about how many are going to
send you the link if you register for the conference.
How many will be launched at the same time? How many will be launched?
I didn't hear that, Tom.
Yeah, how many balloons will be launched at the same time?
At this moment, it's probably close to 10. I haven't looked at the update yet.
I don't know why. I was thinking maybe 100 balloons. I mean, is that something coming up? I was getting a little worried. I was getting a little worried about airspace. I was getting a little worried about airspace if we launched 100 balloons.
We did that during the total eclipse of the sun a few years ago. There were 120 balloons or more up right along the eclipse path. And I think I showed that in a previous show. You could actually see from the APRS track of all the balloons where the eclipse path was. And there were well over 100 of those up. There were about 20 or 30 right in this general area.
Well, let's go back to our phone here. Hey, Roy. So what are you up to, Roy? You don't have anything better to do than to be on here tonight with us? Where's Roy?
May have lost him. Tom, one thing I wanted to do.
Oh, there we go. I have this sweetheart down microphone that's muted when it's up, and I have this very unfortunate tendency to forget to pull it down. So I'll check into Nats, on like All-Star, and they'll say, well, we saw you, Roy, we didn't hear you. So anyway, I've been working on solar this past couple of weeks. I decided I needed a big solar system. I had like a 20 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery from Bioenno and some little fold-up panels. And now I've got these great big Booz RV 170 watt panels, 2 of them in series, and a big Bioenno MPPT charge controller and a 1,000 watt pure sine wave inverter and a great big 100 amp hour battery sitting here under my desk. And I'm having some fun with that, just trying to figure out what I'm doing, how is it charging, how this little charge keep track of your watt hours meter work and all that kind of stuff. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I've got a 280 watt panel out there. It's one of these great big panels that you see commercially out on the side of the highways where they have these thousands of panels out there. And the problem is here, I've got too many trees around my house to actually put it out there. It'd be kind of cool to use that. And Roy, you must have a D104 with a amplifier on it or something. Man, you're really loud.
Okay, yeah, that I don't know.
You're really loud, man.
Actually, I don't.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't. This is a phone. I don't even have a way to adjust that. Now that I think about it, just talk wiser, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, well, that sounded pretty good. That sounded pretty good there. Hey, let's go back down to Jim down in Texas, Jim. So, Jim,
Yes, sir.
how you do, man? You been doing any hamming lately?
Well, I talked to you on the air a couple of days ago.
Did you? I don't remember, man. I am so sorry. But you know what? I was going to say that many of my contacts, when I get on here, many of my contacts are in Texas. I don't know why I've got such a good path down into Texas.
They always tell me that your son lives in Austin, and I live up here in Salado, so...
Yeah. I remember. I remember now. My son Chris, he's in the chat room tonight, and yeah, I remember telling you about that.
Okay, one of those hams that you have there and the feed, I can't remember his name, but he has a cat. I just wanted to say hi to him because my cat is right here beside me, up on the ham desk, asleep with her paws up in the air. So she's enjoying everything.
All right, well, Glenn, meet another cat person here.
It seems like cats and hams go together. I mean, Rich Moseson always has his cat jumping in on him. And mine too. They were here a little while ago, and they found something over on the lab bench, and they grabbed it and ran. So they've left me.
You know, this cat gets up on my radio. Used to get up there all the time when I had kind of a furniture thing on it. I take it off, but she used to get up there. Her name is Squeaky. Ever since we had her as a kitten, she squeaked instead of meowed. Oh. So that's her name, Squeaky. I'll let you go because you probably need more callers to get in there, or I don't know how that system works. But we're really enjoying talking to you and seeing what's going on. You've got a good show there.
Yeah, okay, Jim. Well, hey, thanks so much for calling in, man.
Tom, one of the things you were talking about.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good night. What was that, Glenn?
One of the things I'm finding is when you talked about the interest in the balloon going up or down, I'm finding that every morning I'm checking in to see, is it active yet, where it is, where it's going to go. And that's part of my morning coffee routine is to see what's up with the balloon. And so I think the interest is actually going up, especially with the shenanigans they've been pulling here on these last two trips.
Well, and I have I've been tracking it pretty close and recording. If you want to see the captain's log, I have a captain's log of about 58 days here on this flight, and I'll log the time and the voltage, and the altitude, the speed, and then the heading. And depending on where it is, you can look back at that log, and it pretty much is going to tell you about where it's going to wake up. And it tells you things like when we went through the stands, when I say the stands, I didn't realize what that was, but the stands, that's Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, all those stands, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan. When you go through all the stands, it just don't get out very good. You don't get good coverage. And I was worried the first time around that we were losing power, or we had a transmitter problem, or half the antenna broke off. But then when we went through it again a second time, you kind of look back to the log and say, right here, it did the same thing last time. So it's been real helpful.
I just think like I say, it's part of my daily routine. So I think the interest is actually going up, especially with the unusual. If they were just going straight around the world, it'd be kind of like, well, where's the science and fun in that?
Yeah.
And now with them doing all these loops and going up north and may stay up there or may come back down. You know, now you've brought meteorology into it in a big way.
Well, I'm gonna ask Bill.
To watch.
I'm gonna ask Bill this, but I think I know the answer. The answer is you're lucky. And the question is, Bill, we've been up like 58 days now. This is the SBS balloon, the hydrogen. We've been up 58 days now. It's been practically perfect altitude, and I'm guessing no leaks in the balloon envelopes holding up and all that. And we've launched a number of SBS balloons before that, and we never had one last more than about 10 days. And but it seemed like for some reason this one, there's something different about this one. What do you think, Bill? We're just lucky, right?
I've had them stay up 90 days, and as you know, some of them have stayed up over almost a year, and one stayed up a year and a half to 2 years. So it's just a matter of avoiding the really bad storms, and it's actually good to be up in the northern hemisphere, as far up north as you can get. That's favorable for longevity. And somebody asked about the altitude variance. You will fly lower when you're in the Arctic. Basically, the atmospheric pressure density is a little lower up there than, so you'll float. I mean, you know, as far as your densities, it varies with highs and lows. So you can vary 1,000 feet plus or minus during a flight around the world. So sometimes you'll be up around 42,000 feet, and sometimes you'll be down around 40,000 feet. So as long as you're bouncing between those variances, that's just normal highs and low atmospheric pressure, and so that's perfectly natural. So your balloon is in good shape.
Yeah, I feel it is. You know, we've accomplished our goal of getting around the world, and it's not as big a thing anymore. I used to get up and go in here and wait for it and to wake up, just to see if it was still up. Now I just, you know, I feel like, these young kids, 23-year-old, that, you know, they feel like nothing can happen to them, right? Their mortality, they don't worry about that. So now I kind of feel like the balloon's like that. It's not worried, you know, it's just going to stay up forever. So I don't worry about it. I'll have breakfast. I'll go in here and I go in here and say, let me see where it is, instead of, is it still up? Sometime it's going to come down though, you know.
And Tom, it's not really just luck. I think it's experience. You've learned all the things not to do, you know, handling that balloon material and getting it sealed properly and launching in better weather. So, I mean, I think there's some experience at play here too, but yes, a lot of it's got to be luck.
So, hey, Bill, look, I did this, let me ask you a question about this, Bill. I did this projection on high split, and down at the bottom, there's a, let me turn the phone down. Down at the bottom, there's an altitude type thing, and if you look at this altitude here, like right there, it's showing 13,500 meters. It looks like that's over water. It looks like maybe while we're over water, we have a higher altitude, and we're over land, we have a lower altitude. What does that mean?
Once again, that's looking at, see, the balloon is isobaric. In other words, it floats at a certain pressure level.
Okay.
And as that pressure level varies with highs and low pressure zones, it'll appear to be going up and down, which it does, but it's still at the same pressure level.
So this is,
that's a great example that you're showing there of the variance in altitude. Hang on a minute, I'm going to get rid of a grasshopper who made the huge mistake of landing near me.
Hey, maybe we'll, is it a big grasshopper? Maybe we'll put grasshoppers on the next flight.
They've got about double the intelligence of those ants.
Well, I'll tell you, it'd probably it would do more than triple the weight. So, Dave, when you're flying, I'm sure that I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that as a pilot, you have to know what kind of weight you're putting in that plane, right?
You bet you do.
Yeah, and that's the same thing on our balloon. We watch the weight very closely. So right now we have ants that I think we can have more ants in there. One grasshopper would probably overload it.
Yeah, I mean you're down to counting milligrams, aren't you?
Well, down to tenths of a gram or whatever. In fact, Bill, I'm going to change the string we use. I think I'm going to go down to like 4-pound test on the string. We can get that down to like 0.001 grams.
I wouldn't do that for the main support string, though.
Really?
Right. I'd use around 20 pounds for that.
Yeah. Well, the thing weighs like 15 grams. You don't think a 4-pound test is good enough?
I know from experience that 4-pound monofilament, when I shoot it with a crossbow for putting arrows in trees, a 4-pound test is very fragile in cold temperatures.
Yeah, you're saying crossbow. Now, I had a friend that came over to my house one time with a crossbow, and we were going to put a line over a tree. And let me tell you something. That crossbow shot 18,000 miles an hour. It went over this 100-foot tree, and that arrow probably went at least 2 or 3 miles. More than likely, it probably got a cow somewhere a couple miles down the road. That's a lot of force on a crossbow, man.
Yeah, but Tom, I think there was a good
to stay with heavier line.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark said something good, and that's how does the cold temperature affect 4-pound line versus 20-pound line?
Yeah.
It's primarily, this is spectra fiber. It's braided, and it's monofilament would be a bad thing to use. This is the stuff I use to support the antenna wire.
Yep.
Some people don't use it for the bottom antenna. They just leave the magnet wire dangling, but I actually use it on both legs of it because it doesn't add more than a gram to everything. Could you imagine an HF antenna that weighs 3 grams that works? And this is the magnet wire roll that I use for the magnet wire.
So, Bill,
for the support line that goes to the top from the swivel up to the balloon, I use 20-pound test.
All right. Well, see, my first flights, and you can't see this with the green screen. That's the 50-pound test Power Pro that you were just showing. 50-pound. It's still
your biggest problem is the knot itself. If you create a knot when you're tying it onto the balloon, that's your weak point, and you either want to put Kapton tape on it or use one of those fancy fishing knots that don't actually create a knot.
So I'm reducing weight. I went from the 50-pound down to the 10-pound. So
is that what you used in this last flight? The current one?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember.
You've got to keep in mind that the balloon itself, the plastic, is the majority of your weight. And, playing with 1/10 of a gram in the payload is not going to have that much effect on performance. Because how much does that balloon weigh?
I think that balloon's about 130.
107 grams.
How much is it?
7 grams. Okay.
107?
107.
Yeah.
So, plus or minus 0.5 gram on the payload is not going to have a significant effect on performance.
A couple 100 feet.
Yeah. And 2, we use the little fishing swivels, and I'll buy the smallest little fishing swivel I can. And Bill, I'll even take the pliers and I'll take the little hook off of it. That reduces the weight by half, and then you just got the 2 little swivel balls, and tie in there. But that you're right. That small line is hard to tie. It is so small you almost can't see it when you're trying to tie that stuff in knots.
Well, the knot is very critical because I actually had one that landed and the balloon was still partially inflated and twisting in the wind, and it broke the knot knot as the balloon was twisting around. So that's when I started putting swivels in to help with that. But then I also put Kapton tape over a knot if there is one, because that'll help it from twisting at the knot.
Yeah.
Have you noticed with this building aspect that since the demise of Radio Shack, that we are keeping the sporting goods departments of some of these various stores in business with fishing line and swivels and all these cool components that we've been needing?
You have to make do with what you can find now.
Exactly. I mean, I've been keeping the home improvement places open, with wood and enclosures and just, one of the most recent enclosures I used was actually a sprinkler timer waterproof box. I put a wireless access point in one of those for a mesh network to mount it outside. So,
we used to have, Glenn, we used to have several Radio Shacks. You could basically find one within a couple miles of you. And then we had 4 parts houses for more commercial stuff and hobbyists that had all kinds of heat shrink tubing, and they sold test equipment, and they were always there was a big crowd in every day. And in one place,
Bill,
they had stuff going back to the 60s. Remember the gym packs from Jameco?
Yeah.
Where you could buy an integrated circuit in a bright yellow package?
Yeah.
These people had a whole wall of those. It was like stepping back into the 70s and 80s.
Well, Bill,
they went out of business and closed their shop. So there are no.
One of the things that I remember.
W&W, Mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back in the 60s, the Radio Shack, I don't think it had a very good reputation. I mean, you go to get a transistor or something, and my experience back in the early 60s was it was like a floor sweeping,
you also had Olson Electronics.
Yeah, the parts weren't that good there. But see, I grew up in a little town, and again, people have heard the story. My uncle was a TV repairman. I had like 500 junk TV sets, all sitting on their edge, and you just clip out what parts you want. So, and I guess that was good because we didn't have a Radio Shack in my little town of 1,000 people.
Well, in the height
where my allowance money went to mail order catalogs and and if an electronics shop if I could find one nearby. But we had, like I said, W&W was old surplus, and they had a new section. You could find everything all the way back down to from modern components to original Marconi stuff. I mean, it was just an amazing store. And I went to their sale and bought a whole bunch of stuff when they closed shop. I think they ended up selling a lot of it on eBay or big chunks of it to different people. But they had everything. And then there were 3 or 4 Austin Electronics.
There was Mach Electronics.
Mach Electronics. And Mach was kind of, you go in, and they had some new stuff in front, but you could walk around and it looked like my garage, and you could find stuff eventually if you were lucky.
I remember I was out in Silicon Valley for some training years and years ago, and they had these just surplus shops. I think JDR Micro was one. They were the size of a super Walmart, and you actually took a shopping cart when you went in and walked down the aisle and bought the chips in the plastic tubes, buy the tube of chips and parts, and it was just heaven.
In Los Angeles and San Jose, they had stores like that everywhere.
Have you how many of you guys have been up in Mendelssohn's there in Dayton? Have actually gone in the store and looked around? Anybody?
Oh, yeah. I bought a Faraday lunchbox there.
We used to go there. We used to go a day early, and we would go up there, and it's like a 5, 6, 7 story building, and the elevator was actually probably put in like 1880, it's the old elevator. You know, the little screen closes and it goes up. But talk about anything you wanted, junk, anything you want, man. You can find it here.
Yeah, one year they had a corrugated aluminum lunchbox. It looked like something your dad would carry to the mill. And like I said, it was corrugated aluminum, so you could see what was inside. And you could put a cell phone or an HT in that thing, and it went down.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I always enjoyed.
Did you ever go to Fair Radio sale in Lime, Ohio? Did you ever?
I've never been there, but I used to see their little catalogs they would send out.
Hey, to the point about the ICs and being not so good, I worked at Texas Instruments for about 16 years, and I can tell you that most major IC manufacturers would not let a bad IC see the light of day. Most of the ICs were graded by speed or by industrial, commercial, or military temperature ranges, but the stuff that didn't pass those final test regimes usually never saw the light of day, at least from a major manufacturer.
Yeah, I think this was almost before the IC, man.
Was it Mach that went out of business recently, and they had a big sale of their old original warehouse in Decatur that had not seen anybody inside of it since 1960.
Oh, wow.
65.
I had heard about.
And you walked in there. Which one was that?
I think you're right. I remember hearing about it, but I don't know anybody that actually went.
I went, and it was like stepping back into the 60s when I was, first getting into ham radio. They had everything, and it was all, they closed it down in the late 60s and started another shop in Huntsville, and the warehouse full of stuff just sat there since 1968. They had Channel Master antennas right out, the brand new in the box. You name it, they had it. It was musty as all get out, but it was just incredible to step back in time like that.
Back then, probably about a 50-50 mix of germanium and silicon.
Yeah.
But back then, that was one of my favorite things about the Huntsville Hamfest is you had all the military and NASA research and construct and building outfits there, and their surplus was always at the Huntsville Hamfest. You actually had the back half of the Von Braun Civic Center at that time because you had so many vendors selling surplus stuff.
Now, Glenn, there used to be a surplus shop, a couple surplus shops that would buy stuff from NASA and the Army that were just incredible what you would find in there. And we'd go to those auctions and you could find spacecraft. I have reels. I bought a pallet of wire, just basic hookup wire and coax, and some of it is like number 0 wire in this incredible Teflon coating, and on it said for International Space Station use only. I had several rolls of wire that says ISS on it, and this stuff I think was the main power cable within it, because you could wire a house up for this just incredibly. 1,000 amp service.
All right, hey guys, it's getting
I have a barn full of that wire.
Yeah, it's getting a little late. I think we're going to shut the show down. We can continue. We can continue this. We can continue this offline. But hey, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
What do you find in nuts and bolts this week?
Oh gosh, I found all sorts of cool stuff.
I'm still going to build that Whisper receiver.
Yeah, I can't find my copy of that. I don't know where it went.
I've got it on a PDF here. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Let's build it.
But
all right.
There's 2 or 3 articles in this last issue that I had to have. I don't know where they are right now, but one of them was that continuation on the Nextion display.
Yeah.
Part 3 of that. And then there was another one that I thought was really cool.
All right. Well,
buried
you
on the
guys,
desk.
let's see. I was trying to find something to close with. What do I close with tonight? We'll close with Glen tonight.
That'll do it.
Yeah, we'll close with Glen tonight. Everybody take a look at Glen. Take a look at Glen. This is Glen in his lab coat here, and he's got his, he's got his friend with him. Here we go.
Question. The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind.
I am going
There the answer
call
goes.
on my cat and give him a copy of that.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
All right. Good night, everybody. Let me turn the echo off. Hey, had fun tonight. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Don't forget, join our Facebook group, W5KUB. Join our 40 meter net next week. Information will be in the Facebook group. Follow the balloon. If you've got some interesting things you want to see on the show, send us an email, and we'd love to hear from you.